Hey, you believers, non-believers, unaffiliated believers, sort of believers, and even you think I'm a believers. Welcome to the Uncensored Unprofessor, a podcast where we welcome converts, but where we think like disciples, a show where we address things about which today's church is both terrified and silent. Dobry den. Good day. Glad to have you with me. Today's a good day, but yesterday, man, I went to the grocery store. Bidenflation? Shnikes, it's getting out of hand. I bought a couple of cans of propane. You know, the little ones for running a camping cook stove? Last year I paid $7 for a 2-pack. Yesterday, $10. That's a 42% increase. Gasoline? 16 months ago, it was $2.18 here in Spudlandia. Yesterday at the pump, it was $4.49. That's only a 106% increase. Thank you for sharing that with us at the pump, Uncle Joe. And while we've got inflation, there's also shrinkflation. Now me? I've been noticing this for years. Shrinkflation. Companies making and packaging their products ever smaller to maintain their profit margins. Now, you guys, I'm going to confess, I'm a snacker. I love a mid-morning snack, maybe one in the afternoon, too. Shrinkage? I think I noticed it first with Snickers bars. Years ago, Snickers bars were 5 inches long. Now they're 3.9 inches. The package used to say Snickers satisfies. Now, with shrinkflation, there's only room for Snickers Tiz. What? What am I, British? Snickers Tiz? And Kit Kat bars. So small now, the orange wrapper only says Kit on it. Then I picked up a 2-pack of Grandma's dark chocolate cookies, and when I opened the package, there were 4 measly chocolate chips inside. But anyway, I stood there thinking, man, I can't only eat junk food. I better get something more substantial. So, thinking health-wise, I bought a hot dog. And to compliment the dog, I bought a small pack of potato chips. I opened the chips. There were 6 lousy chips and a handwritten apology inside. Well, it all made me blush and think, yeah, I guess it's time to start eating better. So I made my way toward the fruit section. For a couple of minutes, because I'm a man, I couldn't find the grapes. So I asked the pleasant, green apron-clad store worker, "Excuse me, ma'am, where's the grapes section?" She smiled and said, "You mean the grape section? That'd be 1A. Quizzical, I wander over to 1A and realize they're selling grapes in individual packages now. The refrigerated shelf where the vines of grapes used to be has a purple sign that read, "Looking for grapes? Please proceed to boxed raisins." Shrinkflation is so frustrating, and it's killing my wallet too. Oh well, at least by paying 20 to 75% more for everything, I'm helping save the planet. Shnikes, it's the theater of the absurd on acid. You enjoy the show? Do a social media post for me. Written reviews are stellar, but to make it easy, all you have to do is copy and paste a RSS feed post from your Facebook to your Facebook page or another social media app. Unfriends who've recently done just that? Robin DH, Jennifer P, Victor S, Paula AB, Scott M, Irene A, Debbie ML, and Glenn T. Danke, mein gut friends. Oh, and Stephen D, thanks for that wonderful online review. It meant a great deal to me. I appreciate that. Last show I left off with an acute example of how our nation is under the rule of an archon. I could note scads more. The celebrative educational perversion of children, Little boys and precious little girls, they're taking them in kindergarten and teaching them that their God-given genitals are not really essential to whom they are, not substantial to their identity. No, they're taught they can be whatever they choose, or worse, whatever they're groomed to be by those who despise heterosexuality. It's demonic. And I know some listeners were uncomfortable when I talked about Disney and how they're openly strategizing. Please go listen to my podcast number 150, How the Mouse Snuck In. My interview with Samuel Lively on Disney's massive cultural shift over the last decade or two. He did an extensive study on all of that. But Disney is openly strategizing to queer groom the kids who visit their parks and who rent their movies. And when I said queer groom, I didn't mean they were sexually preying on kids. What I meant was that they are intentionally, strategically preying upon kids so that kids would consider getting transgendering surgeries and hormones. Most of all, though, all of this debauched formation of children is meant to turn them into lifelong progressives. Wokesters. You don't believe me? Here's what Disney president Carrie Burke told her company on a video call. Generation Z is 30 to 40% queerer than previous generations. So she said, quote, Disney better get with it. Burke clarified that when she, earlier in her career, worked for Freeform, they were, quote, targeting Gen Z and millennials. We were targeting younger generations, end quote. In another video, Disney's president said she would like to see at least 50% of Disney characters in the future identify as LGBT. That's an end quote. So again, this is now stated Disney policy to steal the hearts, souls, and identities of children. And me? I think that's wicked. And then here in America, we're observing the open hatred for conservative values rooted in both a biblical worldview and American history's emphasis on liberty from the state. We're watching it being smothered and punished and rooted out via our judicial system. The canceling and job termination and arresting and fining and sentencing of those who speak out against mainstream progressive policies. And maybe like you, my wife and I and our Christ-centered friends and family have been, for several years now, been trying to discern, asking ourselves, what in the world is going on? What is the root of this? And yes, of course it's political. It's almost always political. But as I've been saying for over 2 years on my UU show, this is something different. This is no mere Republican versus Democrat, donkey versus elephant election struggle. It's something different. You can feel it. People who are attuned to the frequency of the Holy Spirit tell me they can feel it too. Something is off. This is different. So what do I think? Here's the 30,000-foot level view. Antichrist is only possible after Christ. Antichrist cannot appear until after Christ. Now, undoubtedly, many theologians have said this. I learned it from Leslie Newbegin. Nations that had never heard the gospel were just pagan, only pagan. Yes, their demons could run amok. Sure, their traditions can be sated with godlessness, but they weren't Antichrist. Antichrist is different from mere paganism. And then down at ground level, we're witnessing the public manifestation of the spirit of Antichrist. Antichrist is more specific than old paganism. Antichrist targets Christ. Antichrist is not merely a false Christ, a pretender Christ, a wannabe Christ, right? No. Again, Antichrist targets Christ. Hates the body of Christ, hates Christian values, loathes those of us who were created in the Imago Dei, and it can, again, and I'm thinking out loud with you here, it can only be Antichrist after Christ. The gospel came over the Atlantic 400 years ago with sinners being saved by grace. The church and Christian values had 350 years in the cultural ascendancy. But over the last 60 years or so, forces of Antichrist have been working diligently and strategically to undo that Christian ascendance. And you guys, it's not as simple as saying that everyone or everything that was not churchly was therefore Antichrist. It's not as direct as saying this is about Christians versus non-Christians. Goodness, as I've been pleading for 2 years now, much of the church is turning on Christ, turning away from the gospel itself. No, this is a muddled and messy and confusing battle. Antichrist didn't relax just because this nation was once permeated with Christian values. That was the case whether or not all the people were devout Christians. We are witnessing the unabashed, unmasked, oh, there's a timely analogy, the unmasked hatred not only for Christian values, but for anything that even hints of the aroma of godliness. Antichrist can smell the aroma of Christ from 1,000 miles away. Now, you and I would catch a waft of that Christ aroma and be filled with peace and wonder and mercy, but Antichrist smells the aroma of Christ and it is filled with rage. And even though it masks that rage with happy words, with lying words, with double speak up the wahs, it hates all things godly. And now, the forces of Antichrist are gleefully dancing in the streets. It knows it has captured society. It knows it now holds most all of the cultural levers of power. So, we are seeing it bare its teeth. And moreover, we already know what's on its heart. Babies mulched right up to and through birth. Antichrist hates that season of human innocence. Women stripped of their rights and dignity, manipulated for political ends, mere tools. The elderly are, we can read about it, it's already happening in Europe. The elderly are being encouraged to euthanize themselves because there's such a fiscal burden on their families and society. And society is being strategically divided. At heart, the diabolos is a divider. Society is being divided by skin color of all things. National borders are reviled, ignored, and exploited for the gain of power brokers. Economic inflation wrought as a decided strategy. The more of the populace that is dependent upon the government, the better. Traditional freedoms hated and attacked in the courts. The more control it has over our everyday lives, the better. There are many antichrists among us, 1 John 2:18. So, it's an old script. We learn it about across all human history, and still more broadly speaking, justice perverted, again using rank doublespeak in the name of social justice. Closer to home, when it hasn't gleefully acquiesced to the woke agenda, oh, it's terrifying and it's horrifying. The church is slowly being painted into a corner of non-relevance. Prayer gutted from schools, biblical symbols outlawed, calls for prayer mocked and derided, pastors fined and threatened both for speaking from the Bible and even for keeping their churches open. Private schools, over and over and over and over, denied taxpayer funding. We know what Antichrist has in mind. We can see where this is headed. It always means to corner its prey, attack, kill, and then eat. It positively gets an adrenaline rush over controlling our everyday lives. And all, again to make my point, all as something post-Christ. Antichrist takes as its special target anything that even hints of the aroma of Christ. The ziggurat of Babel was a concerted attempt to reach into the heavens. It makes you wonder, and here I'm speculating. Did those paleo people actually see sons of God descending and ascending into heaven? Or had the divine council members told them that heaven, their place of origin, was up there? In any event, the paleo worldview held that the heavens were up there, and we further see this through big sweeps of the Old Testament with the occasional mention of the high places. The high, topographically high, though they most likely did get high by using drugs, pharmakia at those places. I mean, did you ever watch Mel Gibson's stellar movie Apocalypse? It has a scene, maybe there were two of them, where the Aztec high priest was out of his mind high on drugs while he worked through the ritual human sacrifices at the top of that ziggurat. But the high places in the ancient world were on hilltops or mountaintops or even adjacent or in towering trees. Ancient pagan religions, as part of their practice, used those high places for ritual sacrifices of animals and drink offerings. They used those high places for ritual sexual orgies. In general, they were places to meet with the small g gods. The high places would contain idols representing the god or altars honoring the god. In Jeremiah 32:35 it reads, "They, the Judites and the Israelites, set up their abominations in the house that bears my name and defile it. They built the high places of Baal in the valley of the son of Hinnom." Now, as an aside, in the New Testament this valley of burnt child sacrifice will be referred to as Gehenna, hell on earth, a site of devastation that prefigures eternal devastation of hellfire. They built the high places in Hinnom, continuing here with Jeremiah. They built the high places in Hinnom to offer up their sons and daughters to Moloch, though I did not command them, nor did it enter my mind that they should do this abomination. End quote. God loathed those high places. Repeatedly he commanded the Hebrews to destroy those abominable sites for the worship of corrupted gods. In 2 Kings 23, verse 4 and following, King Josiah destroyed the vessels dedicated to Baal, Asherah, and for all the host of heaven. He burned those vessels outside Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron and carried their ashes to Bethel. Then he kicked out the high priest who served Baal and the sun, the moon, and the constellations, and again all the hosts of the heavens. Isn't it fascinating? That astrological pantheon of gods was critiqued earlier in Genesis 1 in the creation account, but centuries later that pantheon was still around. And furthermore, Josiah broke down the houses of the male prostitutes that were in the house of the Lord, where the women did weaving for Asherah. The Karem, the holy cleansing, the holy devastation of the pagan ritual sites, the high places, continued under King Josiah. So you guys, when you read the Bible and encounter phrases like high places or the hosts of heaven or heavenly host, you can remember that those are not mere poetry about God's majesty. No, more particularly, those have to do with the existence of the sons of God, God's divine heavenly council members, and that God sits enthroned as Lord over them all. Now, so far in this series, we've studied wicked beings, spiritual entities gone bad, members of the divine council who betrayed Yahweh and his character, who turned their backs on God's commandments, holiness, and goodness. Today, another character frequently neglected by Christians regarding the Old Testament worldview, the angel of the Lord. Now, before we dig in, I think it wise to point out the common tendency. There are good angels and there are bad angels, but we think they're all just angels. And by the way, Dr. Heiser points out that the Old Testament never even refers to these beings as angels. No, they're understood to be sons of God, members or former members of God's heavenly council. And I hope, my audio friend, that in light of this series you've stopped being so linear. Even among the corrupted beings there is some kind of hierarchy. I mean, you cannot possibly believe that Lucifer itself has ever approached you, right? I'm grateful that I'm far too small a fish for Satan itself to ever come at me. No, darkness assaults us with much more venial, more minor creatures. Gersh. And 3/4 of the time we don't even need external influence to do things sinful. But so too is it the case that there is some kind of hierarchy among the good angels. Maybe I'll display that in a later show. I'll show you the famed hierarchy developed by Dionysius the Areopagite.
Honey, what should we name our kid?
Dionysius in the 5th century after Christ. Hey, the crowdsourcing site I use, Patreon, Patreon. Different folks go there, including people I've never met, thank you so much, and make pledges that range from $3 to $100. And those pledges variously help me pay for several monthly expenses, help me fund some monthly advertisements, and fill my own existential sails with hope. A couple recent unfriends who made a pledge at Patreon, Matt B. and Brandon B. Truly, Matt and Blake, I'm encouraged. Thank you so much. So, what about the angel of the Lord? Was it a guardian angel? Well, he does have as part of his role the guarding of believers, right? Think with me about Daniel 3. The 3 incomparable Hebrew youth, together with Daniel, so attuned to the Spirit of God that they exceeded Nebuchadnezzar's own magicians and enchanters, chapter 1, verses 19 through 20. Think about those 3 youth in the fiery furnace. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get thrown into a furnace so hot that the flames roasted the prison guards who tossed the 3 Hebrew men into the furnace, chapter 3, verses 19 and 22. You know the story, my listener. The king himself peers into the furnace, chapter 3, verse 25, and he sees not 3 but 4 figures. The 4th? King Nebuchadnezzar described him as having the appearance of a god in some Hebrew translations, or as one who has the appearance of a son of the gods in other translations. And that 4th in the fire protected the 3 men. And so protected were they that not only was their hair not singed, they didn't even smell of smoke, chapter 3, verse 27. And this report is not a hoax. It's not a one-off. No, this story repeats earlier and older apparitions of the angel of the Lord. And it makes me wonder, is the angel of the Lord just a general phrase, a catch-all phrase for any old kind of angel? Once again, our ancient Hebrew worldview tour guide, Dr. Michael Heiser, in his book, The Unseen Realm, will be our go-to here. And while I won't offer a running quotation of his book, I will note that I am following his cues. And a major older cue, an older clue, Moses and the burning bush. Allow me to read to you from Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. Moses was a shepherd with the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, and he led the flock to the west of the desert, and he came to the mountain of God, to Horeb. And the angel of Yahweh appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush, and he looked, and there was the bush burning with fire, but the bush was not being consumed. And Moses said, "Let me turn aside and see this great sight. Why does this bush not burn up?" And Yahweh saw that he turned aside to see, and God called to Moses from the midst of the bush, and he said, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." And Yahweh said, "You must not come near me. Take off your sandals, because the place on which you are standing, it is holy ground." And Yahweh said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." And Moses hid his face because he was afraid of looking at God. Now, I'll admit it, I felt quite the clod upon rereading this passage. How could I have not seen it before? I mean, since I was an 11-year-old in Sunday school, I've heard the story of Moses and the burning bush. God appearing to Moses in a bright burning bush, a bush that was not being consumed by the fire. Was the bush really on fire? Or was the bush in reality only a tunnel or a veil for the brilliance of God? Did the bush seem to be on fire, but the light was really the fullness or near total fullness of God shining through it? The text doesn't say. It just says the bush was not burned up. But the thing that I missed, verse 2, at the start of the scene, the angel of Yahweh appeared to him in a flame of fire. If it was Yahweh himself, why not just say the Lord appeared in a burning bush? Why? Why say it was the angel of God? And so we have, to our great theological surprise, two figures in the bush, the angel and Yahweh. The angel calls to Moses, but in verse 3, when Moses turns to examine the bush, Yahweh calls to him. So Moses could see the angel of Yahweh and hear the voice of Yahweh. Oh, I'm being silly here. This can't be the etymological origin for the saying two in one bush, can it? Oh. Again, we see Moses encountering two in one bush, or better, two through one bush. And Dr. Heiser smartly asks, if Yahweh is speaking to Moses, one has to wonder why the angel was needed. If Yahweh is doing the talking, why does he need a messenger? End quote. Are the two one, or are they two? There's ambiguity on this point. But, Heiser clarifies, the ambiguity won't last long. During the Exodus, in Exodus 23, God gives Moses some commandments about the land, sacrifices, and their new God-appointed calendar. And amid that set of instructions, Yahweh says, quote, "I am going to send an angel in front of you on the way to bring you to the place that I have prepared. Be attentive to him and listen to his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him. But if you listen attentively to his voice and do all that I say, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and a foe to your foes." And then verse 21, "When my angel goes in front of you and brings you to the Amorites, the Hittites, and their ilk," verse 24, "you shall not bow down to their gods or worship them or follow their practices, but you shall utterly demolish them and shatter their pillars." Real quick aside, yet one more time in that passage we have pagan nations worshiping foreign gods, corrupted members of the divine council. Wild, eh? But back to Exodus 23. Michael Heiser points out, quote, "There's something strange about God's description to Moses that tells us that this is no ordinary angel. This angel has the authority to pardon sins or not, a status that belongs to God alone. And more specifically, God tells Moses that the reason this angel has this authority is, quote, "My name is in him," verse 21. And Heiser continues, quote, "What does this curious phrase, 'my name is in him,' mean?" Well, Moses knew instantly. Anyone thinking of the burning bush account does as well. When God told Moses that his name was in an angel, he was saying that he was in this angel, his very presence or essence. The I am of the burning bush would accompany Moses and the Israelites to the promised land and fight for them. Only he could defeat the gods of the nations and the descendants of the Nephilim, whom Moses and Joshua would find there. End quote. Now, you guys, here we are in the Old Testament re-examining ancient Hebrew history. Israel, the nation of the one God, Yahweh. Israel, which in its great Shema, Deuteronomy 6:5, routinely and reverently says together the words commanded from Yahweh, from Moses, quote, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Keep these words in your heart that I am commanding you today." End quote. Shema, the first letter in the word hear. Israel's God was unique for being one. Oh goodness, you guys, isn't it fascinating? Centuries later, when Jesus gets asked by a Jewish scribe, which is the greatest commandment, he begins his answer with, the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. You shall love the Lord with your whole heart, soul, and strength. And I know that every time I tell my audience that Jesus was a good Torah, good law-affirming Jew, their eardrums explode. But the truth is, you guys, Jesus was a good Torah, good law-affirming Jew. Here we are examining basic Hebrew theology. The Lord our God is one Lord, and we have as part of Exodus the salvation out of Egypt by God Almighty. And here we have the angel of the Lord, who both has the power of God, that is to forgive sins, and the name of God in the angel's being. So, this angel of the Lord will help the Israelites destroy their foes under the rule of foreign Elohim. This angel of the Lord will go before them, clearing the way before them, and this entity is an angel. But again, he's no mere angel. Yahweh himself says that this angel has Yahweh's name in him. The name is in the angel? What? What does that even mean? Dr. Heiser, again a Hebrew scholar, says the name is God. God is his name. The identity of God is found in his name. At the bush Shiloh burn, God had told Moses his unpronounceable name, Eyeh Asher Eyeh. I am that I am, or I am who I am, or I am the one who causes himself to be, or I am the being of beings. Scholars say the phrase is layered and mysterious. I am who I have always been. I shall be who I always am. I am my eternal self. Again, Exodus 3:14, burning bush. Moses requests to explain to the Hebrews who sent him. He's asking all this is going on, and God's response is, go in the name of I am who I am. A mysterious, transcendent, eternal, uncaused cause, but a being, not an impersonal energy. And we have to say all these things to pierce into the layers of meaning in those three short but eternity-laden Hebrew words, Eyeh, Asher, Eyeh. Who is God? His name. Who is God? The identity of his name. Gosh, you guys, all of this harkens my very first series in UU history, Faith versus Reason. And in that series I explained, among other things, my own epistemology, my own understanding of the grounds for our being, our knowledge, our very faith. Our faith is not in faith. My faith is not in faith. My faith is not grounded in the fact that God can do a miracle. The Christian faith is not grounded, even ultimately, and we're slicing the cheese very thin here, you guys. The Christian faith is not even ultimately grounded in the, air quotes, story of Jesus. No. Please hear me carefully. Our faith is grounded in the being of God. There can be no prior to God's being. Not life after death, not the story about Jesus, not the authority of Scripture. God's being is the ground. Ehyeh, Asher Ehyeh, I am who I am. Our faith isn't ultimately founded in creation in a literal 7 days. It's grounded in God's being. Not the Bible being 1,000,000% error-free. No, God's being. The ultimate reason for the faith of Ed Rebarchek? God's being. A fleeting feeling of elation? No. Ehyeh, Asher Ehyeh. Prosperity? No. Ehyeh, Asher Ehyeh. Long life? No. Ehyeh, Asher Ehyeh. My deep hope of evil one day being stamped out like some 3/4 smoked camel menthol that was tossed on the street and crushed down by a steel-toed work boot? No. Ehyeh, Asher Ehyeh. There can be no prior to God. There can be no prior to God lest God himself be dependent on that prior. There can be no prior cause, lest God himself be a mere dependent on that prior. So then, what is the prior for God? Himself. Ehyeh, Asher Ehyeh. I am who I am. Got it? Got all that? Then let's go back to what on earth just happened in the burning bush, and then not long after in God's words to Moses in Exodus 23, I'm going to send an angel in front of you. Listen to him. He has the power to forgive sins. My name is in him. The Lord who is one Lord is, are you sitting down? 2. Yahweh is God. The angel of the Lord is God. God extends his authority to forgive sins and identity, my name is in him, to the angel of the Lord. God tells Moses he wants the Israelites to follow the angel of the Lord as though the angel of the Lord were Yahweh himself. Why? Because the angel of the Lord is God himself. Dr. Heiser writes, the I am of the burning bush would accompany Moses and the Israelites to the promised land and fight for them. Only he could defeat the gods of the nations and the descendants of the Nephilim, whom Moses and Joshua would find there. End quote. And as weird or radical as this sounds, this understanding is confirmed in later Old Testament texts. For instance, Judges 2 verse 1. And the angel of Yahweh went up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I brought you up from Egypt, and I brought you to the land that I promised your ancestors. End quote. Angel, Yahweh, angel. Then there's Leviticus 11:45, quote, I am Yahweh who brought you up from the land of Egypt to be for you as God. End quote. Wait, I thought that was the angel. Yes, I thought that was Yahweh. Yep. And what about Joshua 24:17 through 18? Quote, Yahweh our God brought us and our ancestors from the land of Egypt, from the house of slavery, and did these great signs before our eyes. He protected us along the entire way that we went, and Yahweh drove out all the people before us. End quote. But in Exodus 23, it's the angel of the Lord. Which one is it? Yes. And I really don't want to belabor the point unnecessarily, guys, but this is important not only for the rest of this series, but for our understanding the biblical text and the biblical worldview. The angel of the Lord was Yahweh, was the angel of the Lord. They were one, but they were not the same, right? There's no need to introduce the angel of the Lord if he's exactly the same as Yahweh. The biblical author could have just used an adjective, holy, almighty, powerful, to designate a quality about God, but this isn't a quality. This is an angel. Is it just one more of the divine council? No, that doesn't work. That'd make all the sons of God equal to Yahweh himself, and that's something the text will never allow. God Almighty towers over the little e Elohim. This is not just another son of God appearing on behalf of God. Yahweh would never equate himself to a divine council member. Yahweh, the Ayeh, Ashur, Ayeh, would never equate himself to a mere angel. This is the angel of the Lord, and way more than those others. The angel of the Lord is, the text indicates and repeats, God himself. The name of the Lord is, the Hebrew Bible repeats, God himself. What a profound mystery. You don't believe me? Here's Psalm 20, verses 1 and 7. May Yahweh answer you in the day of trouble. May the name of Jacob's God protect you. Some boast in chariots and others in horses, but we boast in the name of Yahweh our God. Wait, the name of God actually protects people? Man, that's almost like the name is God. Right, because the name is God. God's name is its own rich theological category. But, and this is important, boys and girls, the Old Testament never goes on to unpack for us the significance of this. It leaves it in a mystery. The angel of Yahweh, Yahweh who sends an angel as himself, it's unexplained. The name of God in an angel, weird, unpacked, left alone, mysterious. So maybe now you see how wild it is that Nebuchadnezzar said in Daniel 3, when he, the king, saw those four in the fire, I see one who has the appearance of a son of the gods. And as we wrap up today's show, let's check out Joshua 5, verses 13 through 15. And it happened, when Joshua was by the city of Jericho, he looked up and he saw a man standing opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said, Are you with us or with our adversaries? And the man answered, Neither. I have come now as the commander of Yahweh's army. And Joshua, gobsmacked, fell on his face to the earth, and he bowed down and said to the man, What is my Lord commanding me, his servant? Then the commander of Yahweh's army said to Joshua, Take off your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy. And Joshua obeyed. You guys, angels never command people to take off their sandals and bow down to them. In fact, in Revelation 19, verses 9 through 10, an angel appears to John the Revelator. Stunned by the angel's luminescence, John fell down at his feet to worship that angel. But the angel said to John, You must not do that. I'm a fellow servant with you and your brothers who embrace the testimony of Jesus. Worship God. But back in Joshua 5, the Lord's angel commands Joshua to take his sandals off precisely because he's in the presence of Yahweh's angel. And so Joshua was indeed in the presence of Yahweh. That's wild stuff, right? Well, I think it's fun, fascinating, intriguing. It's holy stuff. Holy, holy, holy God, holy immortal, holy almighty. Well, in my next episode, you guys, I'll come back to this divine personification of the King of the Heavenlies, Yahweh himself. There's still more to unpack, but I will reveal one spoiler. He is going to return one day in the future to lead his army once again. For now, may the angel of Yahweh himself guide and guard and keep you. And until next time, please, everyone, go and turn your beautiful God-given brains on.